Meditations with Ryan Zlomek.
Hello, listeners, old and new. Welcome to Meditations with Ryan Zlomek. This is episode 4, and in today's episode, I'm making space to have conversation with Jamie Santos. Jamie is the owner of Three of Swords Tattoos and has been tattooing for a very, very long time around Syracuse, New York, in Bangor, Maine, and as a traveling tattoo artist all over the world. But to think of her as just a tattoo artist is belittling to her accomplishments. I like to think of her as an arts activist and as an arts facilitator who uses her passions to help build the community around us. She is involved in the Cathedral Collective, the Deck the Halls Art Show, and the May Mayhem Art Hunt, all of which we'll talk about in today's show. This conversation is one I'm very proud of because Jamie does a great job of talking about the importance of passion, talking about the importance of heart, and talking about the importance of just putting things out there. We often say that art is never finished, it's just abandoned, and I think she is a living and breathing example of that. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Here's Jamie Santos. We've known each other a long time, and we were just kind of talking about the fact that like your tattoo career alone is like an adult. It's had 18 years.
It is 18 years old. It can legally join the military.
I hope it, thinks about that choice before it just signs up. But one of the things I wanted to kind of kick off with was, if I've had the privilege of knowing you before you were a tattoo artist and as you were sort of like developing as an artist. And I'm curious about like, when did you catch the art bug? When did that become a part of you?
I mean, I think I was definitely encouraged to be an artist since I was little. My grandfather, he was an artist. He did like oilscapes of the ocean. My grandmother was an artist. She did a lot of needlepoint, but she also painted. My mom was an oil painter. She did like really good, like realistic oil painting, a lot of enamel work. So I feel like I was kind of people always say that you have talent, and like you just have it. And I don't think that necessarily the case. It's the time you put into it. So I've been putting time into it since I was like 5 and encouraged to do it from everyone around me since I was that young. So yeah, it's more time, it's more effort. And I did it through high school. I did the whole Scholastic Art Award thing and all that. And yeah.
That's awesome. So as you were, you're starting off as a 5-year-old, you're drawing in sketchbooks or painting on things. And when did you start to see your own style start to evolve? When did you start to figure out that this is the Jamie look? And even just early accounts of that.
I don't think I developed any type of style until like my mid-20s. Like I feel like it took that long. When you're like a kid, you're trying to hone everyone else's style. You're trying to like replicate something you've seen that you think is really cool. You're trying to draw anime. I was drawing Inuyasha and like princesses, like all types of stuff like that. And then like I did more figure drawing and then still lifes and like sort of general practice from like I'd say high school up through college. And then I don't think I really developed any type of style until I started tattooing. But like that also took years because you're still learning. In your first couple of years tattooing, you're still like, trying to cut your teeth. You're still trying to figure out what you're doing. So it's hard to develop a style until like you really have like a good head on your shoulders. And that took me a long time, I'd say.
I'm just envisioning like a flip book of all of your like first 10 years of tattoos, just like seeing that style slowly evolve.
Oh, it's horrible. My first couple of years tattooing, I still have all those drawings. I kept everything. So I have them in a folder so I can see my progression of where I came from to like where I am now. And I feel like you should always try to get better. But if you look back on my old stuff, it's so rough. What was I doing? I thought it was cool.
Well, I want to keep us back in the sort of like pre-high school years for a moment. When is the first time that you noticed that your art could either serve a function or a purpose, communicate something, or could provide value to somebody else?
I'd say it was definitely high school. Miss Hafar and Mr. Ned Whiskey. Mr. Ned. Do you remember Mr. Ned?
I do remember Mr. Ned.
I love Mr. Ned. Um, I mean, he still has a studio, and I have one of his paintings now. I had to pry it out of his hands, but I have it. But yeah, it was definitely high school. I saw that it was making a mental impact on people around me, and I was like, that's weird. But I thought, I don't know, art can be really powerful in a way. And like, even though I was doing a lot of still lifes, I was doing some still lifes that were meaningful in my head. I didn't ever tell anyone the meaning behind any of them, but people like when you put meaning into your artwork, I feel like even if you tell someone or not, someone will get the hint that there's something more to it. And I guess high school was that time that happened.
Well, it's fun. So I'm gonna so for our listeners who are not local,
Yeah.
Jamie and I graduated from Fayetteville Manlius High School, which is a suburban high school, very well-funded art program. We were beyond lucky to go to a place where, as you walked through the hallways, architecture and space was devoted to the arts, and to
It's
showcasing
beautiful.
student art. Yeah, it was a beautiful space. And we had these amazing supportive art teachers, but we also had a really amazing supportive group of friends and community members that were always sort of working. And one of the things that I did in preparation for this interview, Jamie, is I reached out to our friend Allison, and
He did not.
I did, and I got a few anecdotes from her, and I wanted to read this because I think it's a really
Okay.
interesting glimpse into I don't know, the seed that was planted early on in you that eventually turned into the world renowned Jamie Santos.
All
So,
right.
so Allison says, my first memories of Jamie's art involves ninth grade math class. She was kind of punk and goth at the same time and dressed in a funny little shirt, long baggy shorts, and tall striped socks. Sometime after the first day, I noticed she was working on something at her desk, and I peeked over her shoulder to see what it was. To my surprise, it was a drawing of our math teacher as a pig. This teacher loved Ms. Piggy.
Oh, that was a horrible math class.
Well, allow me
I'm
to
pretty sure
continue.
they made that teacher retire, but yeah, go ahead.
So it says it was hilarious and accurate. So I knew we would end up as friends. Neither Jamie nor I enjoyed that class. So you and Allison were on the same page with that.
Yeah.
To make it more enjoyable throughout class, she'd leave little offerings of art on mine and other classmates' desks. These weren't the best of Jamie's work, but highlighted how she used her art to connect with others and express herself. I started noticing Jamie's art in display cases at school. She was always in the art room working on something. And if she wasn't in there, you'd usually find her in a sketch pad drawing something. I feel like if they asked anyone from our class what they remembered about her, it would be her art. Her drawings were even featured on the cover of one of our school's dance marathon packets. Back
Ooh,
in
dance marathon. My God, I forgot all of this.
Oh, it was great. And here's my favorite part. It says back in those days she was pretty shy, but her art had a lot to say. And I think
Yeah.
that like it's such an interesting perspective because now as I'm an educator, I often find that like students, to your point, like everyone always says, like, you have talent, you have talent, you have talent. And like helping students find places to apply that talent is far more difficult than helping them grow as creators.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just think that's kind of interesting. Do you have what's your perspective on that? What's your response?
Well, we had a crazy time in that math class. The teacher, she was older. I watched her throw a couple desks. Pretty sure they made her retire after that. But yeah, no, like, so my verbal skills weren't super great in high school. I came across as super shy. I had a lot to say, but I wasn't good at talking. So I definitely used my art to express myself and become a person, you know? Um, I think that's why I found such value in it for other people, like, really, if a kid's trying to express themselves, they're trying to bud, they're having trouble, I think art is a really good venue to help someone express themselves and they can't otherwise, or feel like they have value or like grow themselves. And I definitely got that from that too, It gave me a pathway, it gave me purpose, kind of kept me out of trouble for the most part until college. But Yeah, no, it's funny because Allison, like, she talks about high school and she has such a better memory of it than I do. So all these things she mentioned, especially Dance Marathon, I totally forgot about that. It was a good time.
It was. So, Dance Marathon was a 12-hour dance marathon
Mm,
that was designed to raise money for Camp Goodies and Special Times, a camp that I have a very strong connection to.
yeah.
But it also was it takes a village kind of project where like all the different it was probably one of the few times that I would see like complete unity in our school where all of
Mm,
these different people from all these different walks of life would come together to make this one event to raise like six figures. Like it was a significant
yeah.
amount of money.
Yep.
But the thing that I thought was interesting was she had sent me because of course Allison has everything too. She sent me the cover of the dance marathon packet, which
Love that
I
she
had
did.
forgotten. It's kind of a I don't know, an interesting almost like the pose is almost like a Spider-Man pose of like a punk
Yep.
girl with like
Oh,
headphones
yeah.
on,
Yeah.
and there's
It's
little
kind of
kind of
self-portrait a little bit.
absolutely, and there's little kind of like cartoony characters that are like around your little self-portrait. And then she sent me another little sketch of these sort of cartoons. But I'm curious about like you start off as an artist sort of figuring things out, and you're kind of emulating Disney princesses and cartoons and all these sort of different things. And then eventually you find your way into this, I think you use the term like traditional or neo-traditional tattoo style, which
Yep.
as you walk around the city of Syracuse, you can see people have your art on their bodies, or you can see, silkscreen prints of your art places, or you go to, I know Strong Hearts was selling a t-shirt that you designed. And as soon as you like see these things, you recognize them as the Jamie Santos style. Um,
Yeah.
what brought you into that style and sort of I don't want to say comfort zone, but like routine approach to your art making, moving it out from away from cartoony to this
Yeah.
neo traditional.
Um, I mean, I think it's trying to hone that style, but also put a little bit my own flavor on it, because like I think as any artist, they sort of try to take from different influences like throughout their life. So I love Victorian, I like neo-traditional, I like illustration. So a lot of times you'll see like all of those styles sort of put into like all the tattooing I do. But it's true, like, but I have like a harder time like if you go to the fair and you're walking around, like, I've been tattooing for 18 years, so I'll try to eyeball and like I'll see someone's tattoo and I'm like, did I do that one? Is that one my it looks kind of like my style and I do it. But I'll have other people tell me that they can recognize, my style of tattooing, like, from a stranger. They'll just like know it because I've been tattooing in this area forever.
It's amazing. I the other thing I'm curious about too is that like in high school you discover the punk and hardcore scene. The music scene, you're going to shows. We had this amazing, I mean it's still there, the Westcott Community Center.
Yeah.
Love that space. And you've been going to shows there. How did being involved in that community alter your perspective of what tattooing was and how you wanted to use your art?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely not as involved as some were, because I was sort of a little antisocial, but like honestly, like when I went to shows, it was mostly with Allison, or it was with Mary, or it was with Julie. So I think we saw Reggie in the Full Effect at some point, and like it was cool. And then there was Earth Crisis were super big at the time, so I got to go to a couple of those shows. I wasn't always allowed to go downtown, but when I was able to like join up and I was able to kind of get exposure to like alternative culture in Syracuse, like it felt good. It felt like there was a different kind of alternative society that existed, that I wanted to be part of, and that like I enjoyed more than I don't want to say like, I guess, conventional living. Like even especially back then, like the hardcore scene, I feel like was its own subculture, so I guess being introduced to that subculture let me see that there are other subcultures that weren't just like a, traditional sort of like style of living, I guess. And tattooing is like a subculture within a subculture within a subculture. Like there's its multi-layered. So yeah, I guess it was cool to get the flavor of Westcott and the flavor of Armory Square. And oh, I'm trying to think. Happy Endings, I believe, was around at the time. We used to do. I go to like those old poetry readings that were there, and like so it was just like it was a lot. It was a flare of culture within Syracuse that was kind of like not as culturally active as it is now. Throughout my lifetime, I've seen it sort of expand, but back then it was just these little pockets of, little alternative culture here and there. And it was great.
Yeah, so if for those who are unfamiliar with the sort of landscape of Syracuse, we were really lucky to grow up in a time where there was, I don't know, almost incubation periods for all of these different areas of the city. So Three of Swords Tattoo, the tattoo shop that Jamie owns, is in the Westcott area, which is the curious to hear how you describe it. I always think of it as kind of like the granola hipster outer university area.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like a mini Portland, when they say keep Portland weird, like I always felt keep Westcott weird. And Westcott's always been weird and nuanced and cute. I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's really cool about the Westcott area is it's, usually those areas in certain parts of the city are reserved for the 20 somethings. And in Westcott, you really do see people contributing to culture in their, as kids and as, retirees. Like through that entire expansion, you see that. The Armory Square area is kind of historically has been like the downtown kind of club scene area, the sort of higher end restaurants. Things like that. And Happy Endings was an amazing cafe that was there for a long time. And then we have the sort of other landscapes of the city where there's just little pockets of, the Italian north side is the Italian section and things like that. But
Yeah.
it's been cool seeing the way in which you have helped in those expansions of the art communities within, outside of it. Because I always viewed you as somebody who, like, when you're growing up, like the Westcott community was like the community where like you were comfortable putting your art out. And now we go around the city and there's there's murals that you were a part of, and there's the West Side where the Gear Factory is there because of a lot of the art contributions you have. Like, it's been interesting to see you sort of expand throughout the city over your career.
Yeah, I think I'm just a small part of that, like I've definitely I will take credit for having like definitely some influence on I feel like if you create things and you put it in the world and you're doing shows and people are going to shows and things, like you definitely are going to have an influence on the thing around you. So you can be a spark just by putting something together, you know.
I love it. I'm gonna put a pause on that part because we're gonna spend some time on it later. But I'm curious about your
Sure.
tattooing career. What in other interviews you do, you always say that you went into tattooing to avoid being a graphic designer.
Oh, yeah. No, that was a trap. And that was college. Like I was going to college for art and I was doing science at the same time, and I was kind of in between like doing one or the other for a minute. And like they were trying to push everyone into graphic design, and I'm like, "Oh, is every college doing this?" and they were. So it became like there were too many graphic designers out there. It became heavily competitive. And like I don't know, like I love college. I love learning. I went back to college also several times, but it's definitely not the teachers, but the higher ups. It's definitely a little bit of a grift. They're trying to get you to spend money in this promise of really doing something, but not always a whole lot of direction. So I didn't want to be a starving artist for my all of my 20s. And I'd always had a love for tattooing. I'd been buying like old tattoo magazines, and I've been like trying to emulate tattooing too, like when I was in like high school. And yeah, so I dropped out of college and I started an apprenticeship.
And was that apprenticeship at Diversified Inc. in Bangor, or
It
was it?
was no,
No.
I was at an unnamed shop before then that I will not know that I will not name the name of. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. And I got out of there after about 2 years, and I went up to Bangor, and I was up there for like 2 or 3 years. So Yeah, that was diversified ink after that. It was good.
Yeah. What's it like being a tattoo apprentice? I think it's one of those things where like whenever you hear people talk about it, it's always like they're really hard to find. And that's the extent of the narrative. Like tell us what it's like to be a learner in that environment.
It's really easy to find a bad tattoo apprenticeship. Super easy to find a horrible situation to put yourself in. And it's really hard to find a good situation to be in. But over time, like that's also morphed. Like the stories I heard from people being tattoo apprentices, like even 10 years before that in the 1990s, were far more gritty, until like the time here, like 2023. I feel like there's less abusive tattoo apprenticeships. But yeah, you just got to be really careful about like what you're looking for. If you are paying someone, to teach you, like you have to be like make sure they're actually teaching you and you're not just like giving someone money for nothing. Because I've heard stories about that too. But yeah, it's a hard thing to get into for sure. There's a lot of gatekeeping. With reason, without reason, like I feel like you have to accept new styles of art into like the world of tattooing. It can't always be traditional all the time, while also like upholding a standard of integrity, you know? So you have to find someone who's going to be able to take on both of those concepts. Um, yeah, it's a thing. It's a whole process, and everyone's different with it.
Yeah. What were the valuable lessons that you took away from your apprenticeship?
Um, well, the first apprenticeship, not good. I don't know if I took much away from that except like a foot in the door. Um,
Sometimes you learn what not to do when you're in a space, right?
I was I was apprenticing with Jamola, who now owns Resurrected Tattoo. And so we apprenticed under the original same guy. And I was talking to Jamal at one point. I'm like, I feel like I had to unlearn all of the things that guy told me. And then, when I moved up to Maine, I was tattooing under a student named Fast Eddie. And I feel like he taught me about machine tuning. He taught me about like actually doing smooth lines. He gave me the whole plethora of knowledge that I wasn't getting. Like he taught me about mags, taught me more about needle groupings, about consistency, about business. Like he was a good business dude. So it was, yeah, it was definitely that. And then also like at that time, especially, there was a whole world of tattooing that um it was definitely more party oriented. So not only did you have to know all these technical things, be an artist, but you also had to know how to just like hang out. You had to be an entertainer also. And if my mentor Ed was anything, he was an entertainer. He has a big boisterous personality. So yeah, you have to be like everything. It's fun.
That's and when you say you have to be an entertainer, are you referring to for your colleagues, for your clients, for your brand?
All of it. All of it. You know, for your clients, if you're getting a tattoo, like some people prefer it and not kind of feel people out. Some people prefer like just kind of sitting there and taking it. But like a lot of times people like exchanging stories. Some of the coolest things about tattooing is like getting to know people that you wouldn't get to know otherwise. So and some people have some wild stories and everyone has a different life path. So you kind of get a small sampling of humanity like when you're tattooing. And for me, that really kind of brought me out of my shell, is having to socialize with people and entertain them and talk to them like while you're essentially torturing them for money, because that's what it is. They're asking for it. It's a cosmetic thing, but it makes their experience better. It makes your experience better too most of the time. And then like if you're in an open studio, you're also talking to your colleagues, and it becomes like a whole back and forth. It can be really fun. It's really beautiful at times, you know?
That's awesome. So I'm glad you brought up the open studio thing. So Syracuse is known for having really high quality tattoo studios, right? Like we've got a
Yeah.
number of them in this town that people, just as they travel to come and get tattooed by you, they travel for all these other artists, and they have for decades. It's
Yeah.
actually kind of a fascinating little case study in the culture of tattoo. But in regards to, so you worked for Diversified, you worked for Scarab Body Arts,
Mhm.
you were at Timeless Tattoo, and now you've opened Three of Sword, where you have complete control over that environment, right? Like
Yeah.
this is your baby. And I'm curious about how, as you've been to all these different places and you've traveled to different tattoo shops to be a guest tattooer for a little while, what were the elements that you wanted to bring into Three of Sword to make sure that it was sort of like your ideal tattoo culture?
Um, that's what did I want? So like I wanted a business that I think that I would feel the most comfortable in, you know? So I've definitely tried to make it more female friendly for sure, or more LGBTQ plus friendly or more BIPOC friendly. And not to say that other studios aren't, but I definitely wanted to make sure that that vibe, was felt at Three of Swords. That was pretty important to me. Um, and like I didn't really want to be a boss. That was just something like owning a business you have to do. And I talked to like a lot of people before I opened Three of Swords, like kind of trying to get like business advice from other business owners, and like, no matter what you try to do, like you'll bring your own set of issues. There'll be their own set of problems. So like the ones I tried to avoid, I tried my best, and you kind of figure out business owning as you're going along. It's like a whole thing. Um, but yeah, for the most part, like I think I'm definitely more comfortable tattooing the space now than I ever have been, even just from starting the business. I think I definitely had a pretty big learning curve when I first opened it up. But I've been working for other people for, most of my career, so 15 years. So, and I don't know, my one of my old boss, Kyle from Timeless, I'd talked to him. He's like, like when you're kind of you're like, see how it is kind of thing. And I'm like, I knew it was gonna be hard. Like I knew it. And I think I get that more than anything. But like I'm definitely enjoying the atmosphere more than I ever have for sure.
That's awesome. And like what is it about that atmosphere? I mean, I think when I think of you, I think about just like all of your art and all of your initiatives are so welcoming, just in general. So no matter what you did, it was going to have that vibe. But what in the space physically, or the way in which people are set up, or the art you hang on the walls, what are the sort of thoughts that you put into the space to build that culture?
I mean, I definitely try my best, and I feel like majority of people feel welcome. I don't know. I try to be like as cheery as possible. Man, what makes us welcoming? I
I'll, I'll
don't know.
I'll give you an example is that you guys have chosen an open concept, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of having cubicles or any sort of space like that.
Oh
Like
yeah. Everyone can talk to each other. That's fun. That's fun. I like that. I was in a private little space sort of tucked away, especially at Scarab for like 7 years. And like that was comfortable for a bit, but it was also very isolating. So the ability to sort of like, everyone work off each other's energy, like I feel like that definitely that feels great. And I don't know, I guess I play DJ a lot, like at the studio. I'm trying to feel the vibe out for the room and put out a different music that's going to like either up that vibe or mellow everyone out. I don't know. We have the SpongeBob whole theme song, and like everyone seemed like, I didn't know that everyone was so into like not only SpongeBob, this SpongeBob like theme songs. throughout the show. And I think I had like on like I don't know, probably like death metal on or something before then. And then like I've turned SpongeBob on and the whole room just erupted and like, oh my God, SpongeBob's on. Like, and that was so cool because everyone's just started singing the songs and bopping along with it. And yeah, I know. I like that kind of that energy, like camaraderie. Like that felt fun.
Well, and Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, is from Syracuse, so we've got that connection.
Yeah, actually, Christiana, who I've been working with for 3 years now, was great. We went to see Tom Kenny, and Bobcat Goldthwait was there. It was great. They had,
I was at that show.
were you? Yeah, it was fun. It was crazy packed.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Tom Kenny has a club band that he goes and he plays big band songs at with this huge group, Tom Kenny and the High Seas. So if you really want to see SpongeBob in a whole new light, check them out on YouTube.
It was perfect. His background dancers had like sequined like gowns and like they're like in yeah, it was a whole thing.
That's awesome. And then also, also just thinking about the culture, I'm really interested in the way in which you curate. Maybe that's the wrong word, but the artists that you have in the space. You've got artists who are doing a little bit of everything. You've got your traditional, neo-traditional. You've got other artists who are doing more like very colorful, sort of like anime tattoos. How do
Yeah.
you decide who is going to be in that space and what offerings you want to have?
I feel like it's less about style wise of people that are coming in. Like so like there's Christiana who specializes in like Hawaiian anime, really good anime tattooer. And then Ren who's doing like simplistic black work and kind of a newer tattooer, so sort of cutting their teeth like with that. And then myself, like who I'm hard to describe yourself, but like it's neotrad, but I do color work, I do black work. I love both of those things. But like when we have guest artists in, it's people that we know, or it's people who I feel have had like a connection to the shop. People reached out to that like want to do some tattooing, but like also want to like maybe hang out after hours, get a drink. Maybe they're just trying to travel. So I feel like it's less about style and um more about not only like kind of everyone kind of meeting each other and jiving off of each other, but also like bringing a little bit more of that to Syracuse, like when like so Joe from Parasol, he was in last week and he does like specifically like black work, and there's only one other artist in Syracuse that does that, Nick Moore, and I've been friends with Nick for years. So like when when Joe came up, like I've been telling them about each other a little bit, or at least I've been telling Joe about Nick, and they kind of came together, and it was this weird sort of like bonding moment between artists. It was incredible. They were almost the same person. It was neat. So I don't know. I think that's more of like an ebb and flow, like especially because I'm a little bit more established now. If people are asking to guest, then I kind of just, see how they are, meet a new person, have a new style of tattooing come into the studio. Since, like I said in our previous thing, since I'm not traveling a lot right now, one of the cool things about traveling to another studio is getting a feel for like a totally new environment. And since I'm not traveling, that environment kind of gets put into the studio from like a different perspective, a different flavor of art. So I guess it's the meshing of ideas. I don't know.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a really nice just moment to capture because I think that like a lot of people consider tattoo shops as being these like stagnant things. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I always think about like the sort of 1980s, early 90s perspective of tattoos. Earlier than that, where it's like, the rough and tough people go and hang out with the other rough and tough people, and they sit there and they harm each other for money. And the whole culture of tattooing has just shifted so dramatically in the last couple decades, where it's no longer just associated with alt culture. It's now, more of a mainstay. Um,
Yeah.
but the ability to create a space where you're a revolving door for new ideas, I just think is a brilliant way to run your studio.
Yeah, I guess I've never really like put a lot of thought into that, but I guess it kind of is. So thank you for that. But yeah, I don't know, we do always have new stuff going on. Like we're doing a little we call it the Great Korok Quest. So if you play Zelda, there's a little creature called Korok that we've been hiding within the Westcott neighborhood, and like just for funsies. And there's going to be a secret surprise coming. If you know anything about Zelda, you'll probably know what the prize is, which is hilarious in itself. But yeah, no, I guess it is like a sort of revolving thing of ideas and culture and art coming through. Maybe that's how I've done stuff for years. I don't know. Thank you. Thank you for that. What am I?
I'm if my like, how do I say this? My highlight from 2023 is having a moment of enlightenment with Jamie Santos. So I think that's really interesting with the Korok thing. Like, you have also people primarily know you as a tattoo artist, I think,
Yeah.
and especially people from out of town. They find you on Instagram, or you're at Shaman's Den in Binghamton, or you're wherever tattooing, and people know you for that. But in Syracuse, I often think that your work in community arts initiatives is the stuff that deserves more of the visibility, because you do such a good job with all those things. So you created the Cathedral Collective, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and the Black Masquerade and the Deck the Halls art show. All these different things. What got you excited about public arts initiatives? And what were your sort of, maybe there weren't goals, but what did you want to do with them when you first started your tattoo career, to break out of just the tattooing space, but start to do things in the city?
Well, so Deck the Halls was like one of the first ones I ever did. That was in 2014.
And can you describe Deck the Halls for people who don't know what it is?
So Deck the Halls basically, and it's when this gallery called Salt Porters was a thing. It was like a little residency place, like right down the way from the Delavan Center. So basically it was an art show with skateboards. So it was tattoo artists, it was graffiti artists, it was little lowbrow artists. It was like some like talented artists from around Syracuse, and then I paired it with a couple bands, one of which was Feast of the Superb Owl. And that was really fun. We had that run for about a week or so, and I had other musical acts come in as well. Yeah, that was that. And I guess I started doing it for, I don't, there wasn't really a lot of art going on that was for the public that I thought was had a lot of pizzazz, to it. Like I had seen like other bigger like cities do these really cool art shows, like Arch Enemy, or like, like all these really cool galleries that were doing like this sort of niche art, and niche for Syracuse. And like I know that we have massive amount of talent here. Like why weren't we doing anything? you know? So I wanted to really put that in the forefront and like really try to like light a fire to make that be more of a thing, like make that like hey, like let's have cool art stuff here. Like why don't we? We all live in this city. Everyone was outsourcing to other cities to like have their stuff exposed. I wanted to be like a thing that people valued and went to and experienced and knew that they could in Syracuse. Public Arts Task Force, they were doing some stuff too. The Gear Factory was starting to do some shows. They've been doing that Revolution show for quite a bit. But like the galleries like Syracuse said, I believe, pulled out of their one gallery they had in Armory Square, and eventually they pulled out of Salt Quarters too. But
And you're referring to Syracuse University.
yeah, they had put some money into downtown and just Salt Quarters for a while, as to my knowledge, and then like that sort of evaporated over time. So besides Spark, there wasn't really a lot of stuff to like do anything with. So yeah, I was frustrated. I was a little bit angry. Like I wanted to make something cool happen, and I did. And I did it.
Absolutely. So I think the thing that's really interesting too is, so, for Deck the Halls, you were at a variety of different venues. You're at Salt Quarters, the Gear Factory, which is a gallery and a studio rental space.
Yep.
Around here, you did stuff with the Delavan Center, you did Beer Belly, you did Deviant Dance, right? Like there's all these different venues where artists take skateboards, do whatever they want with them, hang them up, and then you also made them charity events, if I recall. Like all the
Yeah.
resources went to benefit our local community.
At first it definitely wasn't, because I didn't really know where to take it when I first did it. And I didn't know if it was going to be a success, but like the first show we did like really popped off and it ended up being in the news. I think Spectrum did a thing on it and it was in the paper and I did a couple of interviews about it. I didn't realize that energy was really going to pop off like I did. I definitely hit a nerve with a lot of people in a good and bad way. And like it just kind of took off from there. So when I thought I was able, because I did the show at Beer Belly and then we did it at the Gear Factory, and we raised a lot of supplies for underprivileged schools, like a lot of Syracuse school district schools that like didn't have art supplies at all. I went into I think it was Ed Smith at the time, and the cupboards were bare. There was nothing, and besides the art supplies, like we raised donations and just basic supplies like deodorant. I was talking to peaceful schools and I was talking to some of the teachers, and like some of these kids just don't have basic needs, and that's ridiculous. How do you learn, and how do you be some that's supposed to be functional like in society, and you don't even have your basic needs met, not getting meals or anything like this. So yeah, it needed, and I don't know, it needed to happen. Like I felt like I needed to put more of a meaning to that show, like have it benefit, like an actual, like, not that art's not like a good cause, but I feel like I could do more with it. I could do more good with it. So I hooked up with Lee from Peaceful Schools, and eventually she ended up taking on that show and doing it at Deviant Dance Tribe, which is in Fayetteville, but moving to Manlius now. So hopefully those ladies can continue that mission, I guess, the people I sort of transferred it to, because like it definitely has, it's been going on for, next year it'll be 10 years. And it has traction and it has a good heart to that show for sure.
Yeah, and I want to point out, Jamie's art is always remarkable, but one of my favorite pieces you ever did was you did this beautiful skateboard deck of Steve Buscemi.
I love Buscemi. Oh,
And
crazy eyes.
so great. So if you want to see a different side of Jamie's art, I strongly suggest Googling Jamie Santos Deck the Halls Steve Buscemi.
So yeah, I can be really self-deprecating, and like I'm a good oil painter, but I like to paint ridiculous things, like ridiculous celebrities on skateboards for oil painting. So I did Steve Buscemi, I did Ron Swanson. I think I did Shia LaBeouf because he was a ridiculous turned jerk. But he had like all these memes about him, like the Just Do It one at the time. You said tomorrow yesterday. It's like comical characters in a really serious medium. I thought that juxtapose was just fitting. So I have fun with it. I'm gonna do another oil painting this year for Deck the Halls. So I don't know who, but I don't. Do you have any suggestions? What ridiculous celebrity should I do?
Oh God, that's dangerous. I'm gonna have to think. It'll come to me at some
All
point
right,
throughout
go
this
back
interview.
around.
I mean, I feel like Peter Lorre, like, if we want to go like really, really old school Hollywood,
Okay,
he's just such a like classic looking weirdo.
sure.
Shelley Duvall, like,
Oh, I haven't thought about Shelley Duvall in a while. Yeah,
you can choose whether you want the Shining Shelley Duvall or the Popeye Shelley Duvall. You get all the options.
they're both equally creepy.
Yeah,
The
and
Popeye maybe more so.
she's making a new horror movie now. It's like the first film that she's made in a really long time, so you can get like modern Shelley Duvall.
Really?
So awesome. Well, so with all the, with all the things you did, you also created the Cathedral Collective. So you can tell us a
I
little bit
did.
about what that was?
So like basically I've been connecting with a whole bunch of artists. And like this whole time I had been working with my colleague, Cayetano Valenzuela. He had been tremendous help and influence for this whole thing. So like we were basically just rounding up artists and trying to make stuff happen, but there was like no name and there was like no entity behind it. It was just sort of this like floating thing. We had an idea to call it the hand for a while. Kitana had made up this weird six-fingered hand. I think it was too ominous and too occulty. Maybe, I don't know. No one really liked it. But so the Cathedral Collective was more like especially for me, it was more of a housing to kind of put all these different kinds of artists into to make these events happen. And like I guess everything needs an entity, but it had a name. No one really knew what it was, but they knew they were part of it and they knew they were like doing things to contribute to it. And it was always transient. It was mostly me and Cayetano, but it was like other random artists would just sort of pop in, pop out of each event, but we're generally working with the same kind of group of people. So that's how that kind of came to be. Basically, it's not like a established organization, but it's sort of like this online entity. Like we have a Facebook, we have a Discord, we have an Instagram. That's how it kind of came to be, I guess.
And it's cool because it's a place for dialogue. It's a place for meetups, which I think is one of the big components is that you do your Java and draws, right? Through
Yeah.
that. And it's almost the art is almost secondary. The art is the thing that brings people together, and the bringing people together is the part that makes it valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, it was community. I mean, I guess anything, it's trying to create this community of people that feel safe in this sort of thing as much as possible. Like it's getting together, it's making art together, it's doing these events together. So I ended up passing on the organization after 2020 to Amanda of Naughty Printmaker and then Sherry Dunkel from Nerd Alert Art. That's their handles online. And I hope I can see them also do that in the future too. Yeah, they're still carrying on with the Java draws. That'll be the next one is September 24th at Salt City.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out to Salt City Market, one of the greatest resources we have at
There
this
we
time.
go.
So you also, I want to talk about one more thing that you did, which I think was really cool. And there was this little thing that happened. You might remember it. It made the news. It was called the pandemic. And
Yeah.
in 2020. And it's fun. You and I had a meeting during that to talk about like, hey, let's do a Java and draw together or whatever, which I'm
Yeah.
putting that, we're making that happen. We'll put it on the calendar.
Okay.
But you started May Mayhem, which
Yeah.
is one of those initiatives that truly how do I say this? When you create a project that makes people reschedule their day based off of what you're doing, you've created something that has gotten its hooks into people. So can you tell us what May Mayhem was?
May Mayhem also. And that was another brainchild of me and Cayetano. And it was a sparked thing. We put together like this little thing called May Mayhem, where even if you were social distancing, you could go out and find art. And yeah, people rescheduled their jobs. Like if they had no job at the time because they weren't essential, like they would go out and it was the thing to do in their day is to find this piece of art sort of like hidden anywhere within Syracuse. I feel like if you were an artist involved too, like you really enjoyed doing it because like what else were you supposed to do? There's like not much, but that was another one of those things that definitely kind of like right time, right kind of spark, right kind of energy to like people get like super enthused about it, you know? Yeah, it's really neat. We're still did it this past year. Again, passed it on. So hopefully it continues. But it's ridiculous. People like will competitively search for artwork, you know, like, and they'll get frustrated when they don't find it or they can't find it, or like we didn't announce in a timely manner, like it was found already. So they're still searching for this thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so like to put some context into it, basically you guys have a network of artists who are ready to make art and donate it to the community.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
they, I don't recall if it was every day or if it's every few days, an artist is essentially highlighted and they go to any area of the city that they feel connected to. And
Yep.
they hide their artwork and they take kind of like a teasy picture of where it could be. And then the community, who is, I think one of the few good reasons to be addicted to their smartphones, are staring at this thing, waiting for this post to drop. And they see this little hint of here's a piece of tile on a park bench, or here's a specific tree that's kind of unique, or here's a body of water, or here's a business that's nearby. And
Yep.
all of a sudden, all these art fanatics who need something to do to get out of the house, some reason to find hope in the middle of the pandemic, are going and searching nooks and crannies for these pieces of art to keep and to take pride in the fact that they found Waldo. They found this piece of art.
It was
Um,
so proud. It was so fun.
Absolutely.
And like people get really creative with it. His artist, Mike Giannatasio, he made a water tower and he hid it up in a water tower, so you had to climb the water tower to get the thing. I hid mine in an alleyway, also like a little bit dangerous. So I tried to be more mindful of that. But you had to like climb up a back alley into an alleyway to find this thing, and I hung it like it was hung in a fine art museum in this gritty alleyway. And you had to find it. You had to follow these clues we listed on Instagram to find the art. But yeah, it was fun. It was a really good distraction to kind of like get out, and like get out of like the horribleness of the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic ruined a lot of things for a lot of people, and was a little like glimmer of hope, I guess, in the day.
And also, I think the thing that I just got most excited about was the fact that all these people that I've known in the art scene forever, and they're people I worked with at summer camps, or the people I've just always admired their art from a distance, all of a sudden they're able to take ownership of a day
Yeah.
and be able to see how their little watercolor is going to truly alter somebody's week, month, year, lifetime.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all art is. Art is painting a flat thing, or sculpture. It's making this object that shouldn't have value. It shouldn't, like it's just a thing. And then if you put an emotional attachment to it, like all of a sudden, like whatever you've done, whether it's a scribble or a masterpiece, like can mean the world to someone. I think that's the theme of art throughout time.
Awesome. And I think the theme of your public arts career, whether you would agree or not, is there's an element of education within it. There's an element of all the things that you do, whether it's role modeling or demonstrating that these things are possible, or actually, teaching a class at the Everson Museum
I
about,
did.
women art and things like that.
Yeah.
But one question I had for you, and I want to be clear that as I ask this question, this is not like a as you're nearing retirement question or anything like that, because you're still a ball of energy. But one of the things that I think is kind of interesting and is that you comment about other cities and going to these other places where there's more people and inevitably more resources, and seeing the way in which their art communities are established and exist and are more public than oftentimes a place like Syracuse, where we're smack dab in the middle of the state. We're one of the smaller cities, but you've put together all these initiatives, and they take a lot of work. They take a lot of elbow grease. They take a lot of sweat equity. They take a lot of time. And it's been
Mhm.
interesting seeing you get to a place where you've built them to an established mark that you can pass it off to other people. You've referenced it several times in this conversation, but how does it feel to take a step back and see someone else carry your baby across a different finish line?
I mean, so as an artist, that's also kind of the point of art, right? It's to and I done like a class with Alex Gray, how they're talking about social sculpting, and like they're using that as a form of art themselves too. So when you create a piece of art, you put, well, at least for me, I want it out of my life and I want it into the world. Some people hold on to it and they keep it and they covet it and they hide it away. I think art is meant to be out there and it's meant to be seen. So like these shows in retrospect, they were also an art piece for me. They were a way to, for better or worse, energize a community to do more art. You know, whether you were part of the show or if you weren't part of the show, it sparked an energy in people that made people want to do things. And seeing that develop, um, and like I've not always an influence for every part of it, but like seeing the art scene in Syracuse be better now than I think it ever has been, because there's the Gear Factory, there's anything at the Delavan Center, there's like all these artists doing their own things, all these craft shows, wildflowers, lunar arts events, like the art mart's still around. The salt market was around for a bit. Like seeing that blossom and be a thing, like that's great. Like that's cool. Like that was the point of all of it, honestly.
Did you know that was the point of all of it when you started these things decades ago?
When you do something, like I said, when you do something, you spark that. Like, like people get enthused about stuff, or they get unhappy that they weren't included and they do their own thing. And like I saw both of those things happen throughout the whole 8 years of doing you know, the civic art stuff. So
Awesome.
yeah.
So one of the narratives, and I'm sure like I don't hear it as often because I think we have these resources in this town, is that when I was getting ready to go to college or I had gotten back, I was always somebody who just like I was in the minority. I wanted to move back to Syracuse. Like the
Mhm.
majority of my peers were so excited to like go and live in Portland or Arizona or Florida or overseas or whatever. And for me, I just always saw this, I don't know, this hope for the city and this energy that I couldn't find elsewhere. And I'd traveled a lot of places and could never quite find the spirit of Syracuse elsewhere. And I'd hear all these narratives where it's like, Syracuse has nothing to offer. So the question I have for you is that you obviously were willing to put your work out there and you were willing to put your time into this. For people who are listening to this who are in other cities, and I can confidently say we have an international audience as I've looked at our, diagnostics this morning. What type of guidance or what type of encouragement would you give to people who are in small towns or they're in big cities and they don't know how to make a mark or they don't know how to put their art into places? What would you tell them to do?
Well, so I'll say that I feel like the culture of the United States is changing anyway. And where I used to hear people like talk badly about Syracuse, like now people are moving here and talking positively about Syracuse for so many reasons. And I had never heard that before, my whole childhood. Like you said, people talk down in it. But I think that when you are trying to make an impact in your community, like do it with heart. You're going to spend a lot of time. Like I spent money out of pocket to do it. Um, but it will pay off for the community and it'll pay off emotionally for yourself. Um, have heart, like do it for the right reasons, like do it for the benefit of other people. Do it for charity, do it for schools, like um, do it to enrich your community. You know, if you're doing it just straight for ego, like you're going to get a different vibe from like what you're putting out there. You know, you should do it. I don't want to say selflessly, but you should try if you can. And it's always worth it. Even if you fail, it's worth it because then you learned a way that didn't work. I had several shows that are heavily publicized or known about that, especially within Syracuse, like that didn't do great, but they were still worth it because like you figure out what doesn't work. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh man, I want to go like bench press a statue right now. I'm like ready for this.
Hey, well, you know, if you're doing art stuff, you probably will. No one talks about that part of it. Is like the lifting and the transporting of art. Unless you're taking museum studies, like no one will tell you that that is also a thing.
I think that's true with like as I sit there and I evaluate like the passions that I'm into when it's like, oh, music and oh, pinball machines and like, oh, art supplies and whatever. I'm always like, why did I not choose to get into stamp collecting?
I mean, how heavy is a pinball machine? That's going to be substantial, right?
250 to 350 pounds, depending
Yeah,
on the
there you
game.
go. Yeah.
But it keeps us young and in shape, right? That's why we both in this conversation have not changed one iota from when we were 18. We're both still just youthful looking,
Oh,
beautiful people.
absolutely. Totally. Definitely not aging at all.
I really appreciate you sort of morphing around into this conversation. What are you interested in covering? Is there anything in this chat that you feel like we haven't put out there yet?
I mean, you know, I'm just on your show, just answering questions. I don't know. I'm trying to put it out there in the positive. Like, I'm happy that I was able to pass on these shows and this organization to like, um, you know, like women. Honestly, I feel like so much of the art world is like very male dominated. So I was happy to pass on these successful things like to women who I think can carry it on. So I think that's gonna be really cool. I mean, as far as myself, like, you know, I'm like weaning myself away from like some of these projects I had in the past, but I'm definitely looking forward to the future and gathering some new ideas and you know, figuring out some other things. I got some more tricks on my sleeve.
Yeah, so Jamie's smile just indicated that there's some like a tidal wave of awesome coming our way
I don't
sometime.
know. Let's say that. I'll ruin
Okay. There's nothing interesting happening. You heard it here first on Meditations with Ryan Slomek.
it.
So Jamie, we talked about so many cool things. So May Mayhem people can keep tabs on the Cathedral Collective, which you've passed off is something where people can find that on Instagram or Facebook. If people are interested in you and your work, where's the best place to find you?
Also Instagram. Instagram is the best place to find me. It's Jamie Santos Artworks. I also go by Trash Pumpkin, so you can find me in that. Three of Swords, you know, it's a great way to find myself, Christiana, Ren, and Brittany, who's our apprentice right now. Yeah, if you want to keep track of things I'm doing, those are all the public places to do it. I'm on Facebook, kind of. Might do Threads, trying to do TikTok, feeling old doing TikTok. So, social
Awesome.
media. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm going to completely put you on the spot real quick,
Okay.
which is the one thing we haven't talked about is that you love dad jokes.
I did. Yeah, I do love it.
Do you have any dad jokes that we think we need to hear before we move on?
Um, well, okay, there's a couple. How do you know something's a dad joke?
I don't know, Jamie. How do you know something's a dad joke?
Because it's a parent.
What, did you hear that? I just left room for laughter. You
Yeah.
could hear the
Yeah.
giggles happening with every download.
Do you hear the one about the coffee?
I don't think I did hear the one about the coffee.
Got mugged. So they're so dumb. I love them. That's why you love a dad joke, you know, they're stupid.
Yeah, I love I stole this one from you, which is I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down.
Uh, I rode my bike today, but it was too tired.
Well, JB, it sounds like we're going to have you back on the show just to do some stand-up comedy.
I won't quit my day job though.
Sweet. Well, Jamie, I the last thing I want to leave this with is that I appreciate you talk about the idea that all your initiatives they need to come from a place of heart. And one of the things that I always think is really awesome is, you live in a place for a long time and you meet a lot of people and you find the ways that your web interconnects with other webs. And the thing that I just find so cool about you is that as I'm looking at all the people who we are sort of interconnected with, they're not people from just the tattoo world. And I'll say this, that, we've been having an hour long conversation about tattooing, and I know. And I don't have a single tattoo, but I appreciate every single thing that you do because it really brings it out. But I just love the fact that, like, so many people feel that they need to lock themselves into a niche, or that the niche they're in has to be that. And I just have always appreciated the way that you've taken art. You've never thought about yourself inherently as, like, I am just a tattoo artist. I am an artist, and here are all the different things that tattooing can do. And whether it's the firemen that I know, or the teachers that I know, or the local artists that I know, your art has impacted all these people. And it's been just such a joy to see that happen over the years. And I know we just joked that, like, nothing interesting is happening, but I can't tell you, every time you bring a new initiative to the forefront, no matter how grandiose or how minuscule, it's just always a joy. And I really appreciate the way you impact all of us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and like I said, I'm just a little piece. Like, there behind me, there have been people to influence and help me the whole time. It's not just me. I feel like it's a web, like it's a web of people who help each other and work with each other to make bigger things happen. When you're, like, doing anything, any sort of organized, there's usually, like, a couple people heading it up, but it's a group effort. Every artist that ever participated in anything or will continue to participate in anything, like, that is all part of it. Everyone has an equal part in, like, getting this stuff get done. Without other people liking what had been happening and, like, artists participating, like, none of it would have been able to happen at all.
We're all just a minuscule part of the puzzle, right?
Yep.
Well, awesome. Well, Jamie, thanks so much for coming. This has been a joy.
All right. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation just half as much as I enjoyed having it. Listening to it again and editing it for this podcast, I just keep finding myself elated and overjoyed and just taking significant pride in what Syracuse has to offer. And for those of you who are listening from outside the city, I hope that you're able to take some of her lessons and apply it to your own communities, because I think that as we're looking at her initiatives 10 years down the road, the effect and the impact can be seen pretty clearly around the streets, in our coffee shops, in our communities, and the way people interact with one another. And that is a tremendous accomplishment. If you like hearing about what Jamie has been doing, please go through and look her up on Instagram or online. Check out 3 of Swords Tattoo. Look at her other tattoo artists. There's a lot of really cool things going on there. Equally, if you like what you heard, please consider checking out a previous episode. On episode 1, I talk with Ben T. Matchstick and Pete Talbot, the creators of the Pinbox 3000, which is a cardboard stem project that's taking the world by storm. They talk about inventing with cardboard, doing localized manufacturing, and, my favorite, their extensive history in the theater world and the puppetry world. I also talked with Nick Parisi in episode 2 about Rod Serling. If that name rings a bell, it's because he's the creator of The Twilight Zone. And Nick Parisi is the president of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. We talk about Rod Serling's impact creating The Twilight Zone, his impact on the golden age of television, and his impact on Central New York in Binghamton and in Syracuse. Lastly, in episode 3, I talk with Dave Foreman, who is a food blogger and the host of the TV show Played at Pittsburgh. We talk about food as a hobby. We talk about food as a way of bringing people together, and just inherently the way food affects us and impacts us in ways that we may not understand. Looking forward, though, on September 27th, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be interviewing Bob the Builder. You may know him from such TV shows as Bob the Builder. It may seem like I'm being facetious, but I'm actually being quite honest. I'm interviewing Mark Silk, who is the voice of Bob the Builder in the US for about 10 years. He also has been featured as a voice actor in Star Wars Episode 1 and the movies Chicken Run. You can find him in the video game world in the video games 2 Point Hospital, 2 Point Campus. He also is involved in pinball machines, doing voices for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pinball machine from Stern Pinball. It's a joy to chat with Mark. We're going to talk about his experience understanding the different voice technologies, discovering his talent for voice acting, and we're going to focus a lot on his family dynamic and the way in which his family and their own learning opportunities influenced and encouraged him. So if you're interested and if you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to the show so that the Mark Silk episode will come straight to you. Leave a review if you like it, and then try to find me on social media. You can find Ryan Zlomek, the world of Ryan Zlomek more specifically, on Instagram and Facebook, and that is at Syracuse Pinheads. Thanks so much for listening. Please make space for conversation. You just might learn something. Have a great day.